Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first ever Policy Perspectives podcast hosted by the Eisenhower Institute at Gettysburg College. This program is a newly launched series and student-led initiative in conjunction with the Eisenhower Institute at Gettysburg and Gettysburg Radio, where we seek to gather different perspectives of students from all disciplines and backgrounds across Gettysburg College. This program seeks to engage in meaningful and provoking conversation on politics, policy, and perspective in our nation and abroad throughout casual campus dialogue. I am your host, Andrew Lemon, a student at Gettysburg College studying economics and public policy. Over the past couple of weeks, I've been working closely with the director of the Eisenhower Institute, as well as different student leaders here at Gettysburg Radio organization. I'm thrilled to be able to launch our first podcast series this evening, where we can officially bring our first conversation fostering politics and policy with two special guests from our college. I would like to extend a special thanks to Tracy Potts, the executive director of the Eisenhower Institute, as well as Gettysburg Radio, for enabling our organization to utilize their podcast network and feed to showcase our important student-led conversation. The views and opinions expressed during this broadcast are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of WZBT or Gettysburg College or the Eisenhower Institute. So, guys, I'm officially thrilled to be able to welcome you guys to our first podcast series that we're starting here. It's funny, this is a continuation of a program that was instituted last year called Campus Conversations, where the Eisenhower Institute really sought to get groups of students together on campus and to foster political dialogue across all different disciplines and from many different perspectives across campus. So we are thrilled to be able to continue that right here, but to be able to share that with the community around us. So what I want to do right now is introduce our two guests. If you would just want to introduce yourselves a little bit, tell where you're from, what major you are, and which year you are, and then we can get started with our conversation. I'm going to go ahead and start with you, Ella.
Okay, I'm Ella Prito. I'm from Westchester, Pennsylvania, so only about 2 hours from here and 45 minutes outside of Philly. I am planning to major in public policy and women, gender, and sexuality studies.
Hi, my name is Maddie Meyer. I am also a freshman, and I'm from Westchester, New York, and I am undeclared at the moment, but I'm looking to study public policy and political science.
So I guess thank you guys, obviously, for coming on and being really the start of the flagship of this program. We're going to go ahead and get into our topic for tonight, and the topic that we're going to be discussing is political heat in the midterms. And not just the midterms across the country, but the Pennsylvania midterms that we are all experiencing as students at a college in Pennsylvania. So we all know the midterms in PA are very critical. Midterm elections will be playing a major role in changing the political landscape of the United States. And they may even determine who ends up winning the Senate. That last Senate seat that comes down to Pennsylvania is going to be very critical. And the governor's race is equally, if not more so, important. Many major pressing political issues are rising on the docket. And we've seen that over the past couple of months as years, I should even say, as polarization has been increasing. And we've got several key issues that the governor will play a major role in with Pennsylvania, particularly abortion and gun regulation. So I really want to start off by first asking you guys, as students here at the college, why is the PA midterm election so important to you? And I really want to gauge this. I guess we'll start with you, Ella, and then transition to you, Maddie, since Ella, you are from Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
What does the PA midterm mean for you, and what is your take on everything that's going on?
Yeah, so especially being from Pennsylvania, it has a special kind of importance, especially because this is the first year that I can actually vote in the election, so that is very exciting. As you stated before, this midterm will decide the outcome of the Senate, and we have a lot of key issues that will be going to the Senate that will really come down to the party lines. And then also with the overturning of Roe v. Wade, that is definitely one of the biggest issues, looking at the governor's race and even looking at the Senate race to codify Roe and whatnot. So I think that's the most important aspects of it, but then also because Pennsylvania is a flip state, I feel like wherever it goes kind of shows you where the nation as a whole is feeling. Mm-hmm. I definitely feel like it's special due to that, the fact that it can go either way.
Mm-hmm. that role in the Keystone State, really. What about you,
Yes.
Maddie?
So, as somebody from New York, politics was always seen as because we're such a blue state, it was always it's always going to just be blue. And now being a resident of Pennsylvania as a Gettysburg College student, I see the importance of how just one vote matters so much. And because there's these key key things that are being questioned or being debated that mean so much to a lot of people, including me, I think that as exactly what Ella said, that it's very important that everyone gets a voice, and it shows where the country as a whole is heading.
Mm-hmm. Kind of that sense of, where are the other states going, I guess, really looking through that direction. I wanted to ask you guys, our campus had a couple weeks, I guess it was last week or a couple weeks ago, they had the campus watch party for the debate that went on. I wanted to ask both of you guys, did you get a chance to see this debate? And if so, how do you think the debate changed the outlook of the election? Obviously, at least from my perspective, I think it may have changed people's perspectives on John Fetterman, really, questioning, obviously with his health conditions, if he's able to fulfill his seat that he's running for. And then it brought to light a lot of issues that Oz was raising, different perspectives he has that were kind of discontextualized from the media. So what'd you guys think of that? What'd you think of the debate, and how did it change things?
Yeah, so it was a tough debate to watch. I didn't watch all of it because I was like, all right, I think I get the gist. As you kind of said, I think it caused a loss of confidence in Fetterman. He definitely was not as well spoken as one would have hoped. And I feel like he often, this happens in every political debate, but they often just didn't answer the question. And Fetterman kept just saying, Oz is lying, he's on TV. And I was like, okay, but what do you actually think about what's going on right now? So that was very disheartening to see. And again, I'm kind of tired of political campaigns just being them tearing down the other candidate. I wish they could actually talk about what they think. And then with Oz, he definitely was very well spoken, but I expected that because he was on TV for so many years. Mm-hmm. So it didn't really change my opinion of Oz, but I do think it made me a little bit more wary of Fetterman.
I completely agree. If I was an uneducated voter watching that debate, I would probably see Oz as more of the better spoken, especially as Ella said, he was on TV for so long, but a better spoken candidate and talked more, even though there was, they were again tearing each other down. But I think that it was a sort of a bad look for Fetterman, where it was something that he needed for his campaign, where Oz, I felt like, didn't need it as much. So I feel like the debate was hard to watch, yes, but it was definitely a big down for Fetterman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny, I was reading stuff and they said if only Fetterman hadn't debated. And I have to say, I don't think that's at all how that should have been phrased. I think, every person should have a chance to debate, and I think, of course, health issues are no one can control that.
Yes.
And I think that it may have brought to light some things, but I think at the end of the day, people know whose policies they agree with, and I don't necessarily know if it will have changed that policy base. It may have may make people sway the other direction merely on a health basis, but mm-hmm. I think it was very brave of him to get out there and to do that right after having a major health issue like that. So I wanted to now ask you guys a little bit about Dr. Oz. So he's not, quote, directly from Pennsylvania, but he's running for a PA United States Senate seat. Did the debate change anything about your perspective on him at all? Brought to light anything that was surprising or that you didn't expect?
Not particularly. To me, Oz is very fake. And again, we talked about him being a media, he's charismatic in that way. He's on TV. But I do feel he is very fake. And I think every single time he tries to appeal to, there's been numerous examples of him, then Fetterman kind of plucking that and kind of using that to his advantage. But for example, I'm close to Philly. My mom grew up in Philly. And he went to Pat's and Gino's, and that is like a very touristy thing to do. And so again, you're not from Pennsylvania. It feels very fake. And then there was a whole thing with Wegner's instead of Wegmans. And so yet again, he felt very fake in the debate. He is charismatic at the end of the day. And so I do think that can attract a lot of voters to him. But to me, I like a little bit more honesty in who I would potentially vote for and who would potentially represent me. And I don't feel that from Oz.
I feel that because he was on like reality TV and he knows how to talk, I feel like he has a sort of false sense of honesty that he portrays, that you feel like you can trust him because he was on TV, which a lot of people feel. And again, as what Ella said, it's very fake. And the idea that he wasn't, born, he doesn't really live in Pennsylvania, quote unquote. I feel like it's definitely hard for people who are from Pennsylvania to see like somebody who's going to represent them that doesn't even know, the basic things about Pennsylvania. But I did during the debate, I did find it very interesting his views about abortion. I thought were interesting. I just didn't know them that well. I guess a lot of us have like these false misconceptions about like certain candidates having different opinions on certain issues, and the debate did change my opinion on him a little bit. But again, as we said, it's hard to trust somebody like Oz who was on television for so long.
And that's I kind of come from that standpoint too. I policy wise would be more of an Oz voter. But I have to say, I really agree with you guys. What is the TV media personality talking and what's the real wannabe representative talking? That was something that was very hard. And so, okay, you guys, something came into my head when you were talking about this. So we saw in the debate a little bit of inconsistency on both sides. The one question that was raised that everyone was like, oh my gosh, what's going on, was the one that where I think they asked Fetterman about fracking. Yes. And they said, what's your stance on fracking? You claimed, and I can't remember the year, they said you claimed back so many years ago you were against fracking, but now that you are for fracking. And they said, essentially what changed your position? And then we kind of had Dr. Oz being inconsistent with that. We've seen in previous articles, they both flip-flop on these policies. So what I wanted to ask you guys, what do you think of their changes in stance on this issue? And, this is a big issue to a lot of PA voters. Pennsylvania employs a lot of people in the oil and natural gas industry, and Pennsylvania as a state is a major producer of oil and natural gas. So I wanted to see if you guys first saw that clip in the debate, and then what did you think of that when you saw that? Did you think it was more or less Fetterman not being able to say what he wanted to say, or did you think it was, or did you think he had something that he meant to explain? And then same kind of goes for Oz. His previous track record has been checkered. What do you guys think of that? Why don't we start with you?
Yes. So. It definitely was very, hard to... That part specifically was very hard to watch. But I do feel that, there is just a lot of, embarrassment of changing your opinion on something, especially as for a candidate that's running for high office. But I don't feel like there should be embarrassment for that. If he endorsed fracking or didn't endorse fracking at one stage of his life and then did, I feel like it would be better for his voters or voters of Pennsylvania to know, for both sides, Oz or Fetterman, that they have changed their views on it, because as people, as rational human beings, we are able to change our opinions on what we think is right and wrong. So I think that them lying about it, about saying that I was always in support of fracking or I was never in support of fracking, I feel like just being honest, saying yes I was or or no I wasn't, but I have changed my mind, would have been a lot more open and honest and would have made the debate go a lot smoother.
I agree with that, and we do constantly see politicians change their mind and try to act like that. With gay marriage, I know there was a lot of people saying well, in 2008, Obama ran and and it's okay, but he can change his mind. With this specific instance, I think what happens a lot is that these candidates go into the primaries and they're trying to appeal to just the Democrats or just the Republicans. And so a lot of times they make themselves more radical. And then you get to the generals, and it's like, well, now I have to appeal to both, or try to appeal to both. And so then they try to get more moderate. And I think that leads to a lot of flip-flopping on issues. I do think Fetterman was struggling to articulate his true thoughts, but I think a lot of it comes down to them now trying to appear more moderate.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Ella. I haven't thought of it that way. You can have a change in opinion. A lot of times the media is like you can't have a change in opinion on something. It's like, well, opinions evolve, opinions develop. You're allowed to change perspectives on that, and especially the way the economy has been kind of transitioning recently. I mean, with the war going on in Ukraine right now, that may be Fetterman's decision to try to favor more fracking for oil and natural gas, as we may be required to be less dependent on Russia in the future. So I think absolutely you're able to change opinions. So with the way, so on issues like this, everything's now terribly polarized. It's not only energy issues, it's not only economic issues, it's social issues, it's every issue that is affecting Americans in every area of their lives. Overall, I wanted to ask you guys, which candidate do you see being able to foster a greater political unity in terms of unifying the Senate? We've seen the Senate's been divided for a long time now. There's a lot of gridlock. Who do you think can best get in there down in Washington and bring people together?
I would love to say someone, but I really think neither. I don't, especially because Pennsylvania is such a contentious state and a flip state. I don't see it coming out and then them trying to work between the aisles. And I think a lot of, just in talking with my family and friends, neither candidates they feel represent them both, the best is what I was trying to say. And so I don't think either of them will foster that unity that we would like to see, which is sad, but that's kind of how I'm feeling right now.
I agree. I feel like they're going to go along with the polarization that we as a country are in right now, and especially the state itself, as we said, is a flip state. I completely agree with Ella. I think neither of them will, try to bring the state together and the views together, because I feel like they need to appeal to their voters, and it's either one side or the other, which unfortunately really isn't the case, because there are lots and lots and lots of voters who, would vote for Oz for his policies and vote for Fetterman for certain policies of his, and vice versa. So I think whoever wins will probably just go more towards, their side and keep their side strong.
And strengthen that. Yeah,
yep.
Exactly.
And I wanted to come back to that a little bit. So beyond the midterms, this idea of polarization, do you think we're at a point of no return? Forget the midterms, American politics. Do you think we're at a point of no return going forward in terms of polarization? Maddie, what you just mentioned that. What can you elaborate more on that? Like, do you think that we're at this point where there's not going to be anything else going forward, any more unification going forward?
Myself, I like to have hope that we one day could become, unified again and be more bipartisan. However, it is hard to see in the future, especially the way it's going, and that it hasn't stopped even now, and that's really all I feel like I can say. I mean, this was the country was very much like this for a long time as well, and then, I think it's when big tragic events happen, definitely like, fortunately to say, is like 9/11, when, when the killing of Osama bin Laden happened, the country came together because they celebrated that victory, or that justice that the world needed, and that the country and the world needed. And so it's unfortunate to say that tragic events do lead to unionization, and I hope that doesn't happen, but I hope that unionization does happen in other ways. But I just don't, I have hope, but I don't see it happening in the near future.
No, and you're completely correct about the tragedies bringing people together. Like, I remember the George Bush speech right after 9/11 happened, and I'm not a George Bush fan, but that was a very good speech to kind of bring everyone together and foster some hope. How I feel right now, much like our candidates, I flip-flop between point of no return, point of return. I think I like to look at the history of the country to feel comforted by it. Like, do I think we're at the Civil War? Because that was obviously, the most polarized we've ever been.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, but maybe. I do have a lot of hope of our generation. I very much love our generation, and I think we can definitely start to feel for each other more. And, these types of conversations and other types of conversations that universities or think tanks or whatever can foster definitely help. And I think we have to keep working towards it. It's definitely not in sight, but it could be.
Do you think it's in sight at Gettysburg? What do you think the polarization is like at Gettysburg? Do you think it's as heat? Is Gettysburg reflective of where our country is right now?
I really do think it is. And
I agree with you.
Yeah,
I agree. I
agree.
wanted to see what you guys said because I completely agree. I think we're a good representative of where the country is right now. We're pretty polarized right now. We can say it. I mean, it's tight. It's tough.
And that surprised me coming here. I didn't think, because I was in my first year, I didn't think it was going to be as polarized as it was. Part of me does enjoy that because it leaves a lot of room for growth, and I think I've learned from the quote-unquote other side a lot and seen and learned from them a lot. And I think there are being efforts made to help. For example, I know we're having you had the debate watch party, or was that just the Republicans, or was that everyone?
That was everyone.
That was everyone. We're going to have the election watch party to bring everyone together, and I think as many as those types of events that we can do will foster the unity that we need.
That's exactly right. We need to it's discussions like this. That's where it starts. Not staying so tightly constrained to one side, being able to move across the aisle. Mm-hmm. So guys, what do you want to see out of your next senator from PA? Both Maddie, you're registered to vote in PA, right?
Yes.
And you're from Pennsylvania.
Yes.
I'm from Pennsylvania.
Woo.
What do you guys want to see out of your next senator? I'm with both of you. I mean, I can kind of answer this. I want someone who's going to unify in whatever way they can. I don't want someone who's going to go down there and is just going to take a stance for whatever party they're in.
Yeah.
I want a candidate who's going to go down there, who's going to seek to foster a party line, but can also work across the aisle and bridge that gap. I don't want an extremist down there, to be frank. I really want someone who is of moderate political ideology, who knows how to make friends, who has the people skills, who's willing to work with others, and who's not just going to go down there and be the quintessential Democratic or Republican Party. Where are you guys on that? What are you thinking on that?
I agree with you, but I do hope that whichever candidate wins does stick with the ideologies and the things that they campaign for. No matter who wins, even if I don't support it, I hope that they stand true to what they have promised their people, the people of Pennsylvania and the people of this nation. That's what I look for. I do hope that they can make friends, that they can help unify as best they can, but I do hope that, the things that they have said and the things that they've campaigned, even if I don't agree with it, they stay true to.
Yeah, agreed. I really want to see kindness. I feel like there is not enough kindness. We constantly, the news we just saw, Nancy Pelosi's husband was almost killed and they were trying to kill her. No. Can we please stop doing that? I really just want to see somebody be kind. I don't want to see name calling. I don't want to see, bashing. I want kindness, and I believe that kindness will lead to the unification that we all want.
And speaking of unification now, we'll transition out of the senatorial race for Pennsylvania and go talk a little bit about the governor's race now in the midterms, and what do Gettysburg students think of the governor's race here in Pennsylvania. So let me just ask you guys, are you satisfied with the candidates running for governor, and what is the consensus that you feel among other students on campus with the governor's race that's going on right now?
I think people feel more satisfied with this race than the Senate race by a long shot. Mm-hmm. I think Shapiro is a very strong candidate because he is actually more moderate. I think he's one of the few moderate candidates we've seen. Mastriano is kind of like the exact opposite. He's very radical. So I think there's a bit more of a clear winner in this race as well. I think the Fetterman-Oz, very close. This, I do feel like, I don't want to say knock on wood, but knock on wood, that Shapiro will win because he is more moderate and he just is a lot more down to earth. And I feel very satisfied with him as the next governor of Pennsylvania.
I do agree with Ella. I just do feel that it is the same way because of their like what they're campaigning on, that it also creates polarization. I do hope that whichever candidate does win does, again, help unify the state. But I do agree with Ella that I feel like Josh Shapiro is more moderate than Doug Mastriano. Mm-hmm. But I hope that whoever does win, does help unify. But I do feel like this race as well is less polarized, but is still polarized just as much as, not as much, but sort of on the same level as Oz and Fetterman.
And you guys bring up an interesting guy, Mastriano. He's been referred to as very extreme by many different groups across Pennsylvania. But I wanted to ask you guys, right now we're starting to see a rise in these types of extremist candidates, as people refer to as extreme. What do you think spurs these type of extreme candidates? And do you really think, is he too extreme to win? And it's funny, we're a lot of people, including a lot of college students and a lot of people across Pennsylvania would label Mastriano as extreme, but I would think he considers himself pretty mainstream. So what do you think is causing these types of candidates, these extremist candidates to come up in the races?
So I think with our age, I don't know about you, but the first election I ever paid attention to was the 2016 election. And so that was extreme candidates. And I feel like since then it's compiled. So in a way, I feel like I've only ever known extreme candidates. And I do think that Trump kind of set a standard because he was a very rash kind of extreme candidate. And I think once he got elected, other people were like, okay, like maybe I can work this angle. And they haven't. People have done it successfully. And so I do think he led to it. I also do think the presidency of Barack Obama, just the backlash we saw from that kind of led to a rise of extremism. And you do see, you obviously see throughout America's history, whenever there's a Democrat in power, it goes back to Republican and ebbs and flows and ebbs and flows.
It jumps, yeah.
And I just think we have been in a very dramatic ebb and flow since Obama.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I would say that something that I guess spurs these types of extreme candidates is due to what people want, what people want to see from these candidates. Like on the topic of like the overturning of Roe v. Wade, people want abortion rights in Pennsylvania, and they want their candidate that reflects that to be extreme on that topic. And the people who don't want the ability to have an abortion in Pennsylvania want their candidate to be extreme on that and be very adamant about that specific topic. Mm-hmm. So I feel like that's what spurs a lot of these type of extreme candidates.
And guys, I think you're exactly right. I completely agree. I think recently we've had a lot of big legislation and Supreme Court decisions that have been... you look right now what's going on. Affirmative action is being discussed, admission into schools. Look back at June, the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, gave the right of abortion as a delegation to the states' rights. That's pretty extreme. And I think you're exactly right. I don't necessarily know if it's the candidates that are just spurring up out of nowhere. I think it's the issues that are being discussed that's really starting to bring the candidates to light, that's really making them jump up at the opportunity to vote. And, it's funny, you compare the two parties and the way they're affecting the midterms right now. I think fundamentally the Republican Party was changed back when Trump became president.
Absolutely.
I think it shifted, and I don't say this about the Democratic Party because I don't feel like there was ever an office holder that existed in the most immediate past that fluctuated that party as much as Trump did. And what's so interesting politically, juxtaposing the two parties, I think Trump fundamentally changed the base of those core voters who are defining the Republican Party. Kind of this change from an elitist, more wealthy capitalist, kind of like Reaganite type supporter, more or less, to like a more blue collar worker who's supporting more of the party. And I think that's where more of the base is coming. So, this is another interesting point that I thought about that I wanted to ask you guys. When we compare the presidential election to the governor of a state's election, you have someone like Mastriano who right now seems to be appealing to the base of Pennsylvania. A lot of blue-collar workers across Pennsylvania would probably be in more support of his Republican ideologies right now. But you do have areas in Pennsylvania that would support Josh Shapiro. Who do you think is going to appeal to Pennsylvania the most? Do you think Mastriano will come out to this Pennsylvania base that Trump has created in the party? Or do you think that Shapiro's going to mobilize the more politically centralized and less what we call or label as extremist radicals? What do you guys think on that?
I do think Shapiro, and I kind of talked about it before, I do think he is a stronger candidate, especially because this is such a contested election. I feel like a lot of eyes are on this, and people are mobilizing a lot of people to vote. And historically, when there are high voter turnouts, the Democratic candidate wins. So in that way, I feel like Shapiro is good. And I think it comes down to the fact that Shapiro is just more moderate. Within conversations of my family members who, again, wouldn't necessarily consider themselves Democrats, but more consider themselves independents, they felt very strongly and very confident behind Shapiro. And so for that reason, I feel that he is going to pull ahead in the race.
Yeah. I somewhat agree. I just the thing that I think is that I really hope that people want someone who's more moderate, a sense of maybe normalcy, less radical extreme, like thoughts and words that are said and expressed. But I do think that there is a very strong maybe like support of the people that Trump has instituted in Pennsylvania. And I'm not from Pennsylvania, but I do know about it because it's such a flip state. So I'm hoping that there's a want for more of a moderate candidate, someone who's more laid back, maybe slowed down. But there's also that idea that there are people who there's a big amount of people, voters, who want an extremist candidate. So I'm hoping that a more moderate candidate wins.
And hopefully it starts to balance out.
Yeah.
That's all you can hope for. Things going forward will be less polarized.
Yes.
I think that could be the fostering end theme for our conversation tonight on the PA midterms. Ella and Maddie, I can't thank you guys enough for coming in and talking with us, for starting off this first policy podcast that we've started here with the Eisenhower Institute at Gettysburg College. Thank you again so much for the spirited discussion. We look forward to many more. We hope to bring back this podcast series in a bi-weekly basis where we have evolving discussions on the ever-changing political landscape of the United States as it is today. And we hope to bring in new and existing students' perspectives, and you two were really, really valuable to bring on today to talk about the PA midterms. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we hope to see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.